Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are an MP Blue Ridge River playing as the Lizardmen against the forces of the Empire. And for this matchup I wanted to try something a little different. I've been using Croxagores lately in this matchup and had quite a bit of success with them. I think they're actually a pretty niche or good pick in this match. But a unit I really wanted to try out was the Horned Ones. I've seen some other players experimenting with them, and they're always a unit that I kind of want to make work. They're, in my opinion, one of the most amazing looking cavalry in the game. They've got some pretty monstrous stats too. They've got great melee attack, great weapon strength, good charge bonus, amazing HP. They're honestly not bad in anything except say melee defense. Cause fear. They're very mobile. 78 speed is amazing for heavy cav. But they rampage, which granted pulls their cost down to 1400. But it does mean they are a little iffy. If they start rampaging, they can quickly get out of control and be 1400 gold down the drain. So I wanted to try to make them work, and we've actually brought a very heavy Horned One presence here, 3 units of them. So for the rest of the build, I did bring Krokar, but he is also mounted on a Horned One. He is not mounted on a Gold One. He isn't even fully equipped. He's got Swiftness of Eatzel, Blessed Spawning, as well as the Onslaught. I didn't have the money for the Hand of the Gods. Honestly, Krokar on a Horned One is not bad. He's not quite as powerful as just on a Grimlock, but he still does have an anti-large bonus. He's still got great armor, great mobility. He's a pretty stellar character that way. For my front line, a mix of 2 Star Warriors with shields as well as 2 normal Star Warriors. These guys will crush through state troops, and they'll do okay against great swords. Not amazing, but they'll definitely do an alright job. They are backed by Vestilodon with Rev Crystal, which I think is absolutely critical if you're trying to make use of Horned Ones. It can potentially help compensate for the fact that they rampage and kind of get out of control. Up here, Saint Priest of Heavens with quite a few different spells. We've got Harmonic Convergence, we've got the Curse of the Midnight Wind, as well as Wind Blast. And Wind Blast is great for destroying cheap, squishy infantry. Like handguns, Free Company Militia, those sorts of units, they do very badly, even against the non-overcast version. 2 units of Chameleon Skinks here to provide some anti-skirmishing support, especially against Outriders, one group of which my opponent had on this flank scouting, and then 2 units of Horned Ones once again hidden here in the trees. I wanted to get a pincer maneuver, but knowing that I'm MP Blue Ridge River, oftentimes your opponent will have some artillery presence, as my opponent has here with a great cannon. I didn't want all my Horned Ones committed on one side, and I didn't want them all committed into the spot where they could immediately take artillery fire. So you can see we're immediately ducking into the trees here, vanishing from my opponent's vision, and making sure that the great cannon doesn't have too many juicy targets. In the meantime, you can see some early skirmishing here with the Outriders. My opponent's build an interesting mix, but not necessarily a bad one. He's got an Empire Captain here in the air with Hold the Line and Foe Seeker. On the ground, he does have an Archlector, interestingly enough, on foot. This is something you don't see all that often. A foot out Archlector with his 2 hammers, with Benediction, and with the Grand Shield of Faith. He actually does not even have the Grand Hammer of Sigmar, so definitely going very cheap here, which is a little interesting, but potentially cost effective. It gives my opponent a lot of options for other tools. The Archlector also does have fairly high melee defense and decent armor, so he's fairly survivable, especially on foot like this. His big disadvantage is that his damage output is atrocious. He's got somewhat mediocre, but definitely lower end weapon strength, and very bad melee attack of 30, which is for any, even except for like Caster Lords, that's a pretty atrocious value. I think Balthazar might have a better melee attack than that. My opponent also does have a Bright Wizard here with Burning Bolts, Burning Head, and Fireball. I do think, as well as of course Kindle Flame and the Power Stone, I do think Burning Head is not really worth it against dinos because dinos are simply so sturdy. Burning Head tends to do good against low HP per model units, which is really not the case with low armor. But Source Warriors have 60, which is okay armor, and they've got very high HP per model. They've got 100 HP or over 100 HP per model, so that's really solid. For his front line, my opponent mixing it up, a few unbreakable units and some swordsmen. He's got some Free Company to provide a little bit of fire support, some Empire Knights, quite a few halberds, a great cannon, Demigriff Knights with halberds, and a single unit of greatswords. And greatswords, for any of you who watch this channel consistently, you'll know that I absolutely adore greatswords in this matchup. I think they're an amazing counter to dino infantry. They'll absolutely trample them, so definitely a very potent pick. Over here you can see my opponent using his captain on the Pegasus to try to hunt down my Skink Priest. Definitely not a bad idea, but what I'm doing here is trying to keep the Skink Priest on ground level, trying to escape the captain because I don't want to be getting beaten down. I've only got 30 armor, definitely not where I want to be. You can see some of those poison darts going in there, slowing down the Empire Captain, giving the Skink Priest just enough mobility to inch away. This is where my opponent kind of overextends, though. He, seeing only my chameleon skinks, he didn't scout out properly with his outriders. They kind of pulled away immediately, and because of that, they never got the vision on these horned ones. So my opponent committed his Empire Knights, he committed his Free Company here, and the outriders, looking to counteract 2 chameleon skinks and a caster. Instead, he is suddenly faced with 2 units of horned ones, and horned ones are just such a brutal cav. You can see they've got 78 speed. They're going to be able to gap close incredibly quickly, and immediately they're just diving into the fray here. Over here, my opponent does get a nice little burning head. He is definitely roasting some of my swords, but you can see the swords are kind of crumping through the tatter souls, definitely crushing through them. They're going to beat down the swordsmen pretty efficiently, and we do, of course, have the support from the Bastillodon, which I can pull into combat pretty shortly. I didn't spot my opponent's Demigryph Knights for a little bit, so I knew he had them hidden here, and so we have kept Crockguard and the Horned Ones here in reserve. On the other flank, you can see our chameleon skinks getting a little tangled up, but we do get a lovely countercharge here. The Skink Priest diving into the fray against the Empire Knights. We did get a wind blast on these poor Free Company, followed up by a charge from the Horned Ones, which means these guys are just dying and fleeing. The Outriders trying to do some fire, but they are getting kind of suppressed by the mass fire from the Skinks, who are kind of pushing past. And you can see the Horned Ones just doing brutal work here on the Empire Knights. No losses yet, 36 models still. Only a couple hundred HP down, and they're destroying the Empire Knights, especially with the Curse of Midnight when active. These guys really stand no hope. Even with the support from Outriders and all those units, they really don't stand a chance. Finally, one model does go down, but you can see the Outriders are getting destroyed, and a pincer coming in from the second unit of Horned Ones, which is going to collapse the Empire Knights. And of course, they can't flee; they're too slow. On the other flank, in the meantime, the Demigryph Knights getting jumped by the Horned Ones. So a nice little flank charge with Crockguard in the midst of them, and these Demigryph Knights with halberds once again too slow to flee, taking advantage of the Horned Ones' high mobility there, and we are going to be able to run down these poor birds. And you can see they're even smaller. The Horned Ones are so big, so nasty. They're just going to run these guys down. That Demigryph there just bobbing away, trying to run as fast. That guy got clocked in the back, coming in with a steel chair there and just putting these guys down. So Demigryph Knight's completely shattered. My opponent's front line is starting to sort of crumble. He does try to make use of a burning head here once again, definitely getting some value, but honestly, I just don't think it's a very good pick against ours. I think if you want to make use of burning head, this is not the faction to use them against. There's few factions that I rate as worst targets for it. Here in the pits, the Empire Captain is kind of getting destroyed, and you can see we do get a nice little wind blast here on the Free Company as the chameleon skinks sort of maneuver out to the flank and start peppering away at these halberdiers. Now granted, we are finally reaching that rampage point, which is an absolute disaster for me, but the halberdiers are so low on leadership that they are actually going to rout. And so definitely a big benefit for us, and the Horned Ones are just going to be able to take them to pound town. You can see they're almost up to 100 kills, and the halberdiers really not having a good day. In the meantime, the priest's still beating down on the Free Company, and here in the pits, things kind of a little going okay. We do manage to kill the flagellants. Seeing that my opponent pulled out his halberdiers and has these great swords, I decided to simply fall back with the Horned Ones and try to get the Bastillodon into the fray. Crockguard here diving in against the Archlector, which is going to be tough for Crockguard. Honestly, Crockguard doesn't have the best melee attack. His melee stats are kind of mediocre. He just has AP and anti-large, but on foot, the Archlector is a very tough nut to crack, very tough target to kill, so you can see we're knocking him about a little bit. Obviously, he doesn't have any healing or anything like that, but nonetheless, a bit of a tough cookie. Another Burning Head goes down, doing very little, but you can see on the other flank, in the meantime, a wrap for the Halberdiers. The two Horned Ones have completely rampaged, but at this point, they've done more than enough work, having destroyed that unit of Empire Knights, having destroyed the Captain for most part, and wiped out 2 units of Free Company and some halberds. They are definitely having a fun time of it. My opponent's cannon here still firing, but we are now pushing forward with the Chameleon Skinks moving in to engage. The Chameleon Skinks also having done pretty well here on the kill counts. You can see the Bastillodon here pulling away with a cold-blooded pop on it from Crockguard, as the Horned Ones and Crockguard are trying to pick apart this Archlector. Here in the pits, the Sarge Warriors with shields are going to slide out with the halberds. I don't know who, on perfect health, it's actually, I think, a fairly close fight. I would assume that in this situation, the Sarge would definitely lose. They're just so badly beaten up. But nonetheless, the Sarge are very good leadership-wise, especially when there's no fear of terror involved, and they're going to hold their ground all too effectively. Anytime over here, the Chameleon Skinks are able to force off the Great Cannon Crew. You can see my opponent actually dismounts there. Not a bad move, because the Chameleon Skinks were about to get on top of him and get him in melee, but you can see they are forced to rout off there. And in the meantime, you can see a bit of mop-up as the Bright Wizard here breaks, and my opponent's army finally does succumb to army losses. And you can see we still had quite a few healthy units there, so definitely we had plenty to work with. So, quickly glossing over the build, I actually really enjoyed the Horned Ones. I don't know if they're necessarily worth it. I don't know if they are a cost-effective choice. 1,400 gold is a lot. It's definitely not a cheap sort of unit. Cold One Knights for the Dark Elves, like cheap unit of that sort. But at the same time, they're not a bad unit by any means. They've got very solid combat stats, not great melee defense, but stellar melee attack, very good mobility. They've got very high weapon strength. There's 36 models rather than the 24 on a, say, unit of demigriffs. They got very high HP overall, 5,400 HP. For comparison, Cold One Dread Knights for the Dark Elves only have 4,300, which is a huge difference. That is a huge gap in how much they can survive. In case you're wondering, a unit of Cold One Dread Knights loses handily to Questing Knights in most scenarios, despite the fact that Questing Knights are a unit that is significantly cheaper, and despite the fact that the Cold One Dread Knights suffer from Rampage, whereas Horned Ones will win that sort of fight. And so they definitely have that big benefit coming in from the fact that they've got a lot of HP. So definitely keep that in mind. It also makes it harder to Rampage them, especially by shooting. In melee, due to their low melee defense, they will definitely struggle a bit in preventing themselves from rampaging, but otherwise, against shooting, they're definitely at least somewhat durable. And as you saw here, they kind of tore through even some halberds, destroyed the Empire Knights, destroyed the Empire Captain, were tanking shots from Outriders, overran 2 units of Free Company. There were definitely no pushovers in that fight, and definitely some solid units. The other unit, with Krokar's help, got a jump on the Demigriff Knights and killed them all for the loss of 1 model. So definitely some nasty stuff. Horned One's very solid unit in that sense. If you can make them work, if you're cautious and don't let them get overextended or don't let them rampage too early on, you can definitely get some good value. For my opponent's build, I can't say I'd necessarily recommend this sort of style. Halberds are definitely susceptible to chameleon schemes. Personally, I like going heavier on greatswords and bring a bunch of shooting, heavy-duty shooting to shut down enemy big stuff. Then bring a handful of heavy cav to sort of block your opponent off and provide some mass. But that doesn't have to be elite cav. It doesn't have to be a demigriff. So you can bring, say, normal Reichsguard or normal Empire Knights, and they can do well enough. They've got enough mass to stop big targets, and they've got enough speed to catch up to, say, chameleon skinks, or at least pressure them back. Nonetheless, good game to my opponent, Sir Grab here. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below if you have not already. If you have any comments, any criticism, any questions, anything like that, be sure to share them, and I'll do my best to respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.